Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another ChiroSecure live event, the leader in avoiding claims, backed up by the best malpractice defense. ChiroSecure's live events educate and support you, the practitioner, by making sure you have the information you need to protect you, your practice, and your future. Now, at the end of today's broadcast, I'm going to show you how you could save up to 10 to 40% over the current premiums you're paying, because ChiroSecure has 7 different policies that'll fit your practice. So make sure you wait till the end of the show. We'll talk about that. And right below the video that you're watching this on right now, you're going to see a little like button, and we'd like you to click that button and like us on Facebook. Well, today we have a great show. We have Bill Esteb, and in a moment I'm going to bring the person responsible for these live events, Dr. Stu Hoffman, on. But let me tell you a little bit about Bill Esteb. After working as the creative director for various advertising agencies in Denver, Seattle, and San Francisco, Mr. Esteb was introduced to chiropractic in 1981 when he was asked to write what became known as the Peter Graves video for Renaissance International. Later, he got together with 2 chiropractors and formed Back Talk Systems. For 10 years, he was the creative force behind this patient education resource company. In 1999, Mr. Esteb sold his interest in Back Talk Systems to start Patient Media, Inc., focusing again on patient education and communication tools that feature high-impact graphics. In 2004, he co-founded Perfect Patients, an interactive website service which manages the online reputations of over 2,000 chiropractors in the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. In 2011, he founded the Paperwork Project, collaboration with Kathy Mills Chang, which supplies state-of-the-art chiropractic paperwork and documentation resources at www.chiropracticpaperwork.com. He's the author of 10 books that explore the doctor-patient relationship from a patient's point of view. His weekly blog post at patientmedia.com and Monday morning motivation emails are ways he shares over 30 years of experience as a chiropractic patient and advocate. When he isn't writing about chiropractic or speaking about chiropractic, he can be found thinking about chiropractic from a patient's standpoint. With that said, I'm going to bring on the man responsible for all these live events, Dr. Stu Hoffman. Dr. Stu?
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate you helping bring these to our doctors around the country. And I hope that I don't have to reiterate what Bill has meant to the chiropractic profession, as well as to me personally. I was one of those people in 1981 that purchased those videos from Renaissance, and have had the pleasure and honor to know Bill for all of these years. Bill has a unique perspective, and it's one that I totally appreciate, because he is not a chiropractor himself. He is a chiropractic advocate, and he's always been under regular chiropractic care. And any of you that have listened to him from the platform know that he's been under a number of different chiropractors' care over the years, and for various reasons. But his research and focus with focus groups into what patients think rather than what the doctor thinks, I believe, is instrumental and genius. And what I'm going to be talking with Bill about today, in terms of from a risk management perspective, is really that patient communication issue. And what's important to know is that when it comes to patient communications, I find in all of the calls that I receive on a daily basis with doctors that consider themselves in trouble at the time, whether it be that they were served papers and they have a lawsuit against them, or they have a board complaint, or it's just a patient making a demand for refunds, or something that has escalated, it is usually where I find myself coaching the doctor on their communication with the patient to resolve the issue and diffuse that negative situation. And that's what I find Bill to be the master of. So with that in mind, Bill, I want to welcome you to our program. I want to ask you, when it comes to patient communication, what do you think is the most critical technique that a chiropractor can utilize on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I think a lot of times many chiropractors get misled into thinking that effective communication is really about being eloquent or about having a well-rehearsed, practiced script. But the real secret that I've uncovered over the years of what really makes a great communicator is that they are incredible listeners. And the listening, of course, we all kind of think we know how to do that, and we simply need to ask our spouses to find out just how good of a listener we actually are. But listening is a social skill, and like all social skills, they're learned, they're acquired over a period of time. And oftentimes we acquire those through the school of hard knocks, where we make a mistake and we have to pay dearly for it, and we vow that we'll never do that again. And that's how many people learn social skills, whether it be what to do with 3 forks at a formal dinner setting and in 4 glasses and all the rest of it. So hearing is a neuromechanical event, but listening is a social skill. And I think that being able to be an effective listener is really the first step to great communication. And it's so tempting to want to say our piece, to tell our point of view, and we think that that's what's going to constitute effective listening or communication rather. And it really is about listening first, which means that we have to receive. And there's a lot of difficulty sometimes for being able to actually be open enough to receive. And I criticize chiropractors oftentimes. I'll be at a seminar on the weekend, and I said, many of you in the audience today are going to get new patients on Monday. Monday's usually a big new patient day. And, the tragedy is that you have not yet met these patients. But you already know their care recommendations is going to be 3 times a week for the first 4 weeks, and 2 times a week for the next 4 weeks, and once a week, and we've heard it all. And there's no critical thinking there. That's literally a form of social bluffing. And there's no way to receive if you already have your answer, and your answer is 3 times a week. Well, gosh, why isn't it 3 times a day for the first 2 days, or whatever? My point is that you have to set aside what you believe temporarily to actually be able to receive. And that's the first step to being an effective listener.
That's great, Bill. And so as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about the doctors in their office and what their general interactions are with the patients on a day-to-day basis. And you brought up a great point about the scheduling, 3 times a week, twice a week, once a week, etc. But when a patient comes in as a brand new patient, perhaps they've never been to a chiropractor before, they fill out either paperwork or a kiosk with electronic application for the doctor or whatever it is, but then they go into the room with the doctor. And I always talk about how does the patient and doctor create some sort of a relationship, and I guess I'm talking more about how do you really get that rapport going with that patient. You started that by talking about listening to the patient, and I think that that's awesome. Once the doctor understands perhaps why the patient is there or what have you, is there any specifics that you would recommend to the doctor in terms of their overall communication at the very beginning of care, before the patient has even committed to care, so that the doctor can create that solid foundational relationship with them?
Well, yeah, I think that there's a lot of emphasis in this profession placed upon brilliant communications at the report of findings. And in my opinion, that's too late. In fact, the report of findings in far too many practices has degenerated into a sales session. That's hardly a report of your findings when you're trying to get someone to buy something. So this creates some tension and some contradictions often that are unhelpful. I think the real opportunity for great communications and setting the foundation for a fulfilling, understandable doctor-patient relationship, it all goes to the first visit. I think the consultation or the pre-care interview, whatever you want to call it in your practice, but it's that initial meeting. I think that's where the action is. And I think that for far too many chiropractors, the consultation is just practically something to endure so we can get to the good stuff, the clinical stuff, get that first adjustment and the rest of it. And I say slow down. One of the things that many chiropractors overlook is that virtually every patient comes into the practice with a pre-existing condition. And I'm not talking about a physical complaint. I'm talking about the headspace of having had an entire lifetime of being exposed to a allopathic worldview. And we tend to ignore that or sweep it under the rug because we want to talk about the chiropractic above, down, inside out, and all the rest of it. And the problem is that the patient is walking around with what I call a medical doctor covenant. That is, they come into a healthcare office and they have a certain set of beliefs, a certain set of pre-existing beliefs about what the doctor-patient relationship is like. And it's modeled after medicine. And this creates a fundamental disconnect before the relationship even has a chance to blossom. All because we ignore telling the truth about what chiropractic is and what it isn't. Now, some people reserve that for the report of findings. I think it's too late. I think far too many chiropractors are afraid to tell the truth about chiropractic for fear that a new patient actually represents a flight risk. That if you actually told the patient the truth, that you're not treating their symptoms and that you're not treating anything, you're just helping arouse the inborn healing ability of the patient, and that how quickly they recover is something that they control, not you, and on and on and on. The key is to get that out up front. And if I were running the zoo, what I would do is, gosh, I would want to find out why the patient's there and listen to their story and not try to interrupt them like medical doctors do after about 18 seconds these days, and just really let them vent and do their thing. And then explain, number one, it sounds like you're a great candidate for chiropractic care, but there's some things you need to know about how our practice works before we formally accept you. And that's when you would lay out what makes chiropractic different from medicine. Not better than medicine, not superior, but different. And it is that difference that is often confusing to patients. And I think if someone wants to walk out of your practice, you want them, or discontinue care, you want them to do that before you do all the clinical stuff and what have you. And so, lay out what makes you different and unique, and see if it's something that they want before you go into all the clinical routine. So I think it's the headspace. It's proudly projecting what makes chiropractic different and unique, that it represents the real opportunity in laying the groundwork, the foundation.
Okay, so when a patient enters your office as a brand new patient to you as well as to chiropractic, the first thing I think we agreed upon is figuring out how to create rapport with information, how to set what you do as a chiropractor different than what their previous experience has been in the medical model. And quite frankly, a lot of the chiropractors practice within the medical model. So it may not be that big of a difference, but for those that are more of a traditional chiropractic setting, those are the patients that need that communication more specifically. And quite frankly, I agree with you, Bill, that if they're going to leave, I'd rather invest my time on the front end to educate them so that they make an informed choice of whether or not this is the right environment for them, because if they're always questioning and always hostile in their mind, they're never going to be a good patient. Those are the people that are always going to create stress for the doctor and the office. And those are the calls I get, so I'm so glad that you brought this on, because so many times a doctor will say to me, man, I just had a gut feeling about this patient the first time they ever walked into the office. And I'm constantly saying, if you had a dime for every time I heard that gut feeling when something goes wrong, it's so true, but that's exactly what I think you're talking about, is going not just with your gut, but with what the patient is actually telling you. And I can really appreciate that. So during a normal cycle of communication with the patient, once you've established, let's call them the ground rules, is there anything specific that you would want to have a doctor understand on a visit-to-visit basis in terms of that continued communication with the patient based on all of your experience? Was that a little too much for you?
No, it's a big question, but you know, I would.
Well, Bill, remember, I'm coming to the person that I think is the expert at this, and how valuable is it to all the people that get to hear and see this, coming from someone that is an actual patient, but understands chiropractic more than so many chiropractors?
Sure. Okay, so let's just talk about the 800-pound gorilla that is in most chiropractic offices that's virtually ignored. And that's the belief that if you make an assertion or declaration, you've educated the patient. Whether you're at the X-ray view box yakking away, whether you are table talking where the patient's face is wedged in headrest paper and you can't see their eyes roll as you talk about the topic of the day, and you force feed them some chiroism that is top of mind today. That is not patient education. Never was patient education. If anything, it's a wimpy form of patient teaching. And the problem is that those sorts of overtures are so easy to rebuff. You just feign interest, you nod your head at the right time, and you know the doctor continues to yak on, and he or she thinks that they're doing something, but what they're really doing is annoying the patient. They're making declarations about what is so, but that doesn't mean the patient is buying it, accepting it, or believing it. And that's where everything breaks down in the doctor-patient relationship. And it is based upon one fundamental mistake, and that is patient education occurs as the result of asking a question, not by making an assertion. And that is a revolutionary idea, to show up curious enough to actually find out what the patient believes. What's been their experience? What's your theory about cancer? Or, you know, how will you know when you're healthy? And on and on and on and on. And it requires showing up, actually being interested in the superior portion of the nervous system, and that's the cerebral cortex. The key is to engage the patient in a volley. Instead, what so many chiropractors do is they have such a great serve, the patient can never return the ball. So there's no volley, there's no exchange, there's no back and forth, there's no adult conversation going on. It's simply a matter of declarations. And so if there's one critical ingredient, it would be to show up curious. And the problem is, so many of us already think that our particular worldview is superior, so we've stopped looking. We don't show up curious anymore. And if you can take on the headspace of truly understanding what a patient believes and how they represent the world and what they think about their body and how long they think they're going to live, and on and on and on and on, you can have a deep and meaningful conversation with patients that can lead to some rather constructive change of beliefs. But it cannot happen by simply trying to break down the front door through assertions. So it's to show up curious.
That's terrific. it reminds me of some of the memos I've seen that doctors have sent from patients that, you know, we both know so many doctors that have been what we would consider perhaps totally successful because they've seen, let's say, high volumes of patients over time. And there's something to be said for that, whether it be communication or just their charisma, but I tend to believe it has to do with their conviction and how they communicate that. But some of these patients that have been coming to some of our doctors over a long haul, they stop coming. And what I get to hear on a number of occasions is they stop coming because they feel like the doctor did not listen to them. The doctor is now taking them for granted. And I can think back to when I was in active practice, and a patient once said that to me, and it was devastating because I pride myself on that connection with the patients. But you know what? It's slip and check, isn't it? Because I realized that the patient was right. And it's not just patients. In your office, you have staff. And sometimes we don't listen to them either. They know more about the patient than we do. And even in my own office, I make it an absolute daily event to go around to every single member of our team and communicate with them because I don't want them to ever think I'm taking them for granted. But do you think that there's an essential aspect of this communication conversation that has to do not just with the patient, but perhaps who the patient brings in, family members and or staff or anyone else in the picture?
Well, behaviors don't lie. And the challenge is that the sad truth is that most chiropractors value a new patient more than an established patient. Okay, I mean, let's just lay it out there. Either because the new patient is more exciting, they're a new conquest to win over, they've got complaints and symptoms, so we've got a real easy way of determining whether we got it or not with the patient, and we just love to show off. And, you know, there's countless chiropractors who will force established patients to wait while they take on an emergency stranger. And that reveals your belief structure. You believe that a new patient is more valuable than an existing patient. And it's difficult to collect a tribe of wellness patients, cash paying wellness patients, if your total focus is on new patients and that first 10, 12 visits of relief care. I don't know. I wrestled with becoming a chiropractor back in 1992 and decided against it based on the suggestion of Joe Felicia, who thought I'd make a great chiropractor, but he thought I could have a bigger practice if I didn't become a chiropractor. And as this turned out, I think maybe he was right. But I think that if I were in practice, what I would want to do would be to create a tribe of wellness-oriented, vitalistic, cash-paying patients, people who valued their health, so I could have a life, so I could take a week off here and there and travel the world, and they would still be there when I came back because they could schedule their wellness visits around my 7-day, 9-day outings to explore the world and have a life. Now, if you don't like that, if that sounds boring to you because everyone shows up feeling great and they leave feeling great and it's boring, I get that. I understand that saving someone heroically can have a lot of psychological payoff, showing up heroically. But it goes back to, what do you want? And if you want symptomatic people in your practice, because that's how you know whether chiropractic's working for you, and you get so much more adoration from patients because they appreciate you and all, then that's a compelling psychological argument for symptomatic people. I get that, but what do you want? And how are you going to communicate that in a persuasive, compelling way that honors the health goals of the patient? And what's even more tragic that we haven't really talked about is the fact that very few patients actually announce their last visit. And where I come from, that's rude. You've helped someone, you've touched them, you've moved the internal structure of their body through their clothing, and you've aroused their inborn healing ability, and they are deeply appreciative, but they don't even say thank you and goodbye. And I've often asserted that that's because it is not emotionally safe for a patient to say goodbye. And so they have to kind of slip out the back jack. They have to make an appointment, break appointment. Make appointment, break appointment. Make appointment, and hope Cindy at the front desk will actually break it to the doctor. Bob's not coming back. Give me the phone. I'll call him. And all that because the doctor made it unsafe for the patient to announce their last visit. And that would create such an enhanced referral environment. That would close the case so beautifully if the patient felt comfortable saying goodbye. And so that's one of the pieces of advice, and it's very counterintuitive to a lot of chiropractors. But the patient's afraid. Number one, you're going to try to talk them out of their don't give up on yourself. That's embarrassing. Or that the doctor's going to melt into some weepy puddle because they're sad that you're leaving. And both of those responses are unhelpful and does not change the patient's behavior. It just creates an artificial lack of rapport that so the patient ignores you in the grocery store when they see you later, they don't refer their friends, and they don't come back when they have their inevitable relapse. So it creates all kinds of problems only because of a lack of communication, where the doctor communicates to the patient that the doctor cares about the patient's health more than the patient does. And that is the undercurrent of a whole host of pathologies in chiropractic practices today.
I was always under the impression that the patient didn't ignore the doctor in the supermarket. They actually went down the next aisle. So one of the interesting things that I've experienced is when I put this malpractice company together 20 some odd years ago now, I interviewed people that were in charge of other similar insurance companies. And the vice president of an insurance carrier, we were talking about risk management, just as I do all the time at this point in my life. And I shared with her my background and experiences in terms of communication and dealing with patients, and she shared with me that up in Canada, their company, what they did for risk management is they taught their doctors how to communicate with patients, how to appreciate patients, how to get patients to like them, because people that like another person generally do not sue them. In this day and age, that has changed some. I have a doctor suing another doctor, and they're friends. But in general, that theory is still reality. People that like the doctor generally, even if something does go wrong in their perception or in reality, they generally don't want to go and sue the doctor. So I think that, you've hit on so many good points about the communication cycle itself with patients, and it's something that I've learned from you over the years and still try to learn. So I appreciate that. And I want to just ask you one last question. It's sort of a loaded question, but you have so much experience in dealing with the chiropractors. Is there one thing you'd like to leave them with based on your experience in speaking to them for all of these years that would make the difference, so to speak?
Wow. Well, let's talk about another taboo topic then. One of the things that differentiates chiropractors, I think, from many other types of healthcare practitioners is not only are they involved in a profession that is deeply misunderstood, but it consists of individuals who, frankly, are cause-oriented. They got involved in a profession volitionally that they knew was going to be the hard, narrow path, the difficult path, the path that runs against the mainstream. They're a rebel. And they're out to dismantle the Death Star. And I think what happens in far too many practices because of that is that the chiropractor does care about the patient's health far more than the patient does. And this creates a sense of guilt and shame on the part of patients. It makes a patient feel like they're not living up to the expectations. It's like what I often saw on my report card in grade school, not working up to his fullest potential kind of thing. And, that's a pretty stiff penalty to lay on someone who is showing up volitionally, and increasingly these days having to pay a lot of it out of their own pocket. So this whole notion about caring too much, there's three types of caring. There's careless, that's where you're burnt out and toast and patients are problems. There's careful, that's where most chiropractors are. And then there's this appropriate place called care. It's in the middle. It's between those two extremes. And, one of the things that I would, attempt to leave you with is the idea that you want to care, but not care too much. That you're not emotionally invested in the outcome or the choices they make. And, it's a kind of a tragic tension that here we've got someone who really cares about health so much they choose it as a career path, who day after day after day encounters countless people who don't care about their health. And it's that tension that you either decide is an exciting opportunity or a huge burden and patients or problems. So one of the things that I would say is, be ultra sensitive and install clear boundaries as to what is your job and what is the patient's job, and make sure that you stay on your side of the fence.
I don't think I could have asked for more. Anyone that's on this, if they don't think that they just gained invaluable knowledge and information, I don't know what we can do to help anymore. You've always been a gem. You still are. Anyone that's on here, I would recommend to look up Bill, find out where he's speaking. He does have a sense of humor. It may be dry, but it is a sense of humor nonetheless. But certainly, go hear him speak. If you read the books that he actually wrote, and you'd have to buy them to do that, you will gain so much invaluable knowledge into the mind of an actual patient, just taking off on all the things that Bill was sharing with us today. And I thank you, Bill, for being part of our experience. I'm thankful to call you a friend and a mentor in so many ways, and I hope you'll keep helping chiropractors around the world as you've done for so many years at this point. And I just want to send a lot of love and appreciation your way.
Thank you so much. It's a delight to be part of your tribe and to contribute.
Thanks. So Alan, if you want to do some housekeeping.
Well, terrific. Great session. Great live event. I just want to tell everyone, as we said before, right under the video that you're watching right now is the Facebook like button. Please click that and like our page. And then to the right of the video, you're going to see what you're seeing on your screen right now, which is the ability for you to enroll in our ChiroSecure concierge service. That allows you to get notified of every future event and get all the notes and the transcripts sent to you automatically, whether you actually wind up coming to the show or not. And as I said before, that if you're not already a ChiroSecure client, with 7 different choices to make sure you get the right policy for your practice, you could save up to 10 to 40% over your current premium. You'll find a little form right on the concierge page, and if you look the 3rd choice down, if you check that, it'll just ask you for some information, and when you submit that, it will open up a very short form that'll help us get you the quote that you need as fast as possible. On behalf of myself, Dr. Alan Weinstein, ChiroSecure, Dr. Stu Hoffman, and an amazing presentation by Bill Esteb, we thank you for joining us on the ChiroSecure Live event, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great day, everybody.